Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Pat. Hey, Andres. Hey, Ellie.
Morning.
Simon. All right. Looks like most everyone's here. All right, we'll just jump into it and let Giannis catch up with us. So first topic, reviewing InfraDev board issues with Jose. I didn't see anything new on there. Jose, any pressing issues on your side?
Not yet. I will still working with the analysis, peak analysis, and then I will try to bring something for the next call, okay?
Yep, yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Thank you. Just wanted to call out nice work done by Heinrich to drop the number of tuples called by that query. Is it fully out on production yet?
Yeah, it's on all our nodes now.
Nice. Oh, very good results. There's a bunch of graphs in the link there. So thank you for taking care of that. And yeah, as Andreas called out, we dropped 1.5 terabytes worth of data this week by dropping the old webhook logs table. And then what are we going to drop? Another 900 gigabytes once we drop the old partitions?
Even more, like 1.2 terabytes or so quite similar.
Wow, it's amazing. Awesome. So nice work.
So we can stop sharding now, I hear. Right?
Problem solved. We can disband the group.
Hey, if we're not using that space, can I use it?
Yeah, I'll get back to you on that, Alex. All right.
Thanks.
Yeah. Next topic. So there's a thread going about a request from a customer to continue support of PG11 into an unknown period of time. So far, they're saying 6 months. The unknown piece is that was it on Azure, the Postgres SQL single server, they're going to skip 12 altogether. They're not going to support 12. They only support up to 11 at this point in time. For flexible server, they do have support for 12 and 13, but it's in preview only. So our customer is kind of in a hard spot right now. So they're asking if we can continue to support Postgres 11 for 6 months, I think is asked, but even then it's unknown if Azure will have the support that they need to continue to run. So there's a lot of good commentary on that thread. I don't know, did we ever come to a consensus, or are we still just throwing out ideas on that?
I think we're still discussing. So yeah, one of the problems, or for us, basically the problem is that we can't really use any of the partitioning features in Postgres 12.
Right.
And that means basically we can't tackle the large tables that we have because of the lack of foreign key support for partitioned tables. I just looked into that, so that basically translates to, can you hear my neighbor? Sorry.
Great. All right.
It translates to, today we have like 2.9 terabytes in CI builds, including indexes, and that has 300 gigabytes per month growth. So in about 6 months, it's going to be 4.6.
You could do the very German thing and just call the police.
All right, but it's, there's very large tables. 5 terabyte table. That's half the size is a problem today. In 6 months, it's going to be a much bigger problem, and it's also the longer we wait to do that, the more difficult this becomes to migrate to. And the decomposition efforts, they're also not going to materialize quickly. So yeah, that's a problem for us.
So I have a naive question, and I have in the back of my mind a few conversations about maintaining parity between self-managed and .com, right? So this may be the repetition of this, but one question that I had is, we already, like at this moment in time, like right now, right, we have Postgres 11, and we also have Postgres 12, where Postgres 11 is actually deprecated, right? So right? Is that correct?
Think with 14.0, we didn't only deprecate support, but we removed the support for Postgres 11, didn't we?
That's true, but like the situation right now before 14.0 is PG11 is deprecated, and we're saying please use Postgres 12. And so in 14.0, we were going to remove Postgres 11, right? So, but we have already upgraded to Postgres 12, for example, on GitLab.com, right? So my question is, are we taking advantage of any Postgres 12 features already, like right now, or have we decided that because we don't want to diverge, like between self-managed customers and GitLab.com, that even though we've upgraded, we will essentially hold off until Postgres 11 is completely gone? Is that kind of the situation that we are in?
Yes. So we can't diverge the schema based on the Postgres version that you have. That's something that we want to avoid as much as we can. It's very difficult to deal with different database schemas, right?
Because I think this was my question, because I know that some features that were built that have not to do with this, right? They utilize Postgres 12 features, and the customer impact there would be, well, stay on Postgres 11 for a little bit longer, but you will not benefit from those features, right? Which in my mind, it's not great, right? But the problem is more like it probably incentivizes over time people to actually upgrade, right? And you want to avoid it as much as possible. I think what I'm hearing here is that you're saying, until we have completely removed Postgres 11, we will not start using Postgres 12 features. And this is the problem, because we will have otherwise diverging database schemas, which is what we really want to avoid.
Yes, there is like 2 points. One is the schema, and since we always support more than one major version at a time. Right now it's 11 and 12, or before 14, and then it's going to be like 12 and 13, following the plan that we had. We always have to have the schema compatible, the database schema compatible with the minimum version that we support, basically, right? And the newer version is going to be like supporting that too. But you can't have the other way around. And then on the application side, you might choose to use certain Postgres features that are not available in the, or it's only available in the most recent version that we support. So in this case, we have had situations where we implemented dual code paths, saying that if you're on Postgres 11, you're going to be using like this way to create a database. And if you're not, then you can use the more advanced stuff. That is something that we can do, but that is also something that we know that is hard to maintain and overhead.
Sure. Like, I understand all of these options are not great, right? But I think the question is, in some cases you have a path forward and you know that you want to like have more, like you have some negative impact, because of some problems like that. But for example, like I'm particularly interested in understanding, like simply put, if we extend our PG11 shelf life, would that essentially mean no partitioning work that uses PG12 features until the point when we remove that database? I think what I'm hearing is that is the case.
Yes, for the large tables that are the ones that we should tackle anyways, that's going to be a problem. We're not going to be able to partition those until we have drop to Postgres 11, or we decide to give up referential integrity in the database, which is also probably nothing that we want to do. Right. This is what has been added to Postgres 12 is the full support for foreign keys when you work with partition tables. Think about CI builds. It probably has like 10 to 15 foreign keys incoming. If we were to partition that table, we would either have to give up on those foreign keys or leverage the Postgres 12 feature. And giving up on foreign keys is not something that we should be doing, I think.
Okay.
Can I add something?
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Can I add on top of what Andreas discussed? So our plan, if we were never to go to PG12, we had a plan to build those features ourselves. So we were discussing, and Pat has started some work on adding support for foreign keys. But the fact that we decided to go to Postgres 12, and we decided a year ago, meant for us that we could stop that effort, and we could focus on everything else and depend on the fact that we will be on PG12 and use those features that PG12 offers us, especially the foreign keys, which we need for all tables except for the ones that we have already added. So I cannot think of any table right now that needs partitioning that does not have any foreign keys. So effectively, yes, at the moment, we cannot go back. We could, if we wanted, if we had a year, and we said, let's say we pause to PG11 for a year, we will start again thinking about building this feature on our own. But it's not like if we go for 2 or 3 or 4 months, we will do partitioning. We will wait for to go to PG12. There are all the upsides in the world to go to PG12 from that respect. I want to add something more, and I'm still trying to catch up. There are some features that we have added, and I think that we have an MR for 14.0 to switch to the materialized CTEs. And this is dependent on PG12. And if we are going to make this optional, we may have to rush an update. Yesterday.
This is a pragmatic question I also raised in the thread that I think nobody has really answered yet. It's like, I assume that at this point, a lot of MRs that clean up PG11 have been merged, right? And if we decide to actually continue supporting PG11, all of that stuff needs to be reverted, right? Because, or at least managed, right, in some way. And I don't know what that means.
There are not a lot. For sure, there is the one about materialized CTEs. I don't know if Andreas has anything else in his mind, but we will have to go back and check because we have started removing things. So, for example, one of those forks that Andreas was mentioning was the check that if you are in PG11, we will do it one way. If you're not, we are going to add a materialized keyword. And I think that we have merged that, the switch to full PG12. But yeah, as with everything else, we have to check. Andreas?
Just wanted to add that if we decide that we need to revert those things, we have to do that before we tag the release for 14.0. So that means
today.
we would have to do that within the next few days, basically.
Yesterday.
Exactly, that's what I mean. No, and this last question, and then we can move on. Sorry, Craig, I'm like capturing the agenda. Yes, it's like
this is important, and they're waiting for a decision from us, or waiting for feedback from us to advise the customer. So we should spend as much time as we need on this.
If we were to extend it for 3 months, anything that we just discussed essentially doesn't change, right? We would still have to do that work, right? But would that be a acceptable time frame with regards to the growth of those tables for GitLab.com?
So basically, let's talk about CI builds because that's the largest table that we have. Delaying that for 3 releases, 3 months, puts us into a position where we can only start, shipping the first partitioning migration in 13.3, perhaps, right?
14.3.
14.3. And then those partitioning migrations, they take a few releases due to how that is being released to self-managed. So we can't really do that in one go or in 1 week. We can do that in 1 week on GitLab.com, but since we're constrained with self-managed release cycles, it's gonna take like 2 to 3 months in addition until we can basically get the benefits from partitioning. So that means basically delayed for 3 months, add 3 months for a migration, perhaps add another month because those are going to be large tables that we have to migrate. And the longer we wait, the longer is the migration going to take due to the data size. And we're talking about basically not having any partitioning migrations within this year. And that means basically, as we discussed in the beginning, that this table is going to be 5 terabytes at the end of the year. And we have to deal with that basically. And on the flip side, we already see incidents in production where basically a lot of people are looking at it. We're drilling into the problems, and we the conclusion is that we have to break those table sizes down. So what we've sort of with SRE, what has been established is that yes, we should have a target of cutting down table sizes so that physical tables are below 100 gigabytes, let's say. And this means we have to do some kind of partitioning, and that's dependent on Postgres 12. Okay,
thank you. And another sort of, because I'm trying to like also form an opinion on sort of the trade-offs involved here, right? It's like, what do we want to do? I think one of the concerns that I have with regards to that customer is that they're essentially asking us to hold off on, upgrading based on the schedule of a third-party vendor that we don't control. Yep. That makes me a little bit nervous, right? Because it means that, like, let's say we hand over a 3-month grace period and something completely out of our control, right? The vendor chooses to not do anything in that time, or things don't happen or whatever, we'll be in the same spot in 3 months, right? And then we'll have the same discussion. And, my question is like, what will change, right? In the meantime, and we don't have any control over that whatsoever, right? And so that makes me a little bit worried, right? Because you're kind of tied to that then. And I'm not really positive that the customer's problem will go away in the next 3 months, or for that matter in 6 months, right? I just don't know, right? And so that's maybe something to ask as well, is because another option for that customer would be to actually move to Omnibus, right? Or, like they stay on 13.12 for a longer time, right? But that has security implications, right? Because we can't easily backport, because that's also really hard, right? So it's like, in a way, we're maybe suffering here from the implementation plan for that customer not taking into account that the vendor that was chosen for Postgres, does not actually align very well with our Postgres strategy as a company. So here we are. Okay, that helps a lot. Andreas, thank you so much for highlighting this, because I didn't fully appreciate the reasons why we couldn't take advantage of Postgres 12 while maintaining the other Postgres version. But in a nutshell, for me, it's essentially, as long as we keep Postgres 11 around, we can't partition. If we can't partition, we may run into availability problems on .com. Any delay on that exposes us to significant risk.
Exactly.
Okay.
And something that is, sorry, just to add to that, something that is not really visible in that regard is that the problems with the large tables, that also affects development in the end. Because we have to find rather creative solutions for dealing with those large tables. An example was the data migration for CI builds, extracting the pending builds, where we actually spend a lot of time dealing with those situations, because we can't just, do that. It's not straightforward anymore. So that also feeds back into development, and it's not only a GitLab.com concern in that sense. Would it be helpful to have sort of a summary on that
yes.
regard? Right.
I was about to write
typing
it, but if you could write, if you summarize it exactly like we did right now, I think it would become a lot more apparent that this is not a technical, things are complicated, but it is really if we continue to pursue this path, we won't be able to do this, if we won't be able to do that, this is the risk, right? I think that needs to be clear because I'm not quite sure that's understood right now. And then follow up with Josh right now to make sure that that's clear.
Okay, cool.
Because we may still end up doing this anyways, right? Like this is not my decision to make, but I want to make sure that people understand the risks associated with that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I have a question there. Typically we'll support the last 3 releases. Is that right? We continue to backport all those. I mean, that's 3 months anyway, right? That we need to continue to support 13.12, which is the window that they're asking for. Am I missing something? Our support for 13.12 is within that 3-month window.
Yeah, no, that is true. I think it's maybe the last 2 releases rather than the last 3 releases, but I think the point still holds.
Yeah, so I mean, in other companies that I've worked at, they've maintained a branch, like a long-lived branch of the older releases, and they will spin those up and fix them for customers that refuse to move forward. That might be an option for us too. Just say, yeah, we'll only do critical fixes for you, but you're not going to get any new features or anything if you, for whatever reason, choose to stay on 13.12.
Yeah, I think I've been in that place with a couple of customers. It is a very not very fun place to be, right? Because things change a lot. So I would really like to avoid having the customer like special flavor. But
absolutely,
on the other hand, like it's a like choose your poison, right? It's like what is worse, right? And I absolutely do know that based on the deliberations of us as an organization, we have backported things for people for like 10 releases, if that was necessary, right? So it's like, it has happened, but it's not something I think we want to do or think is great, right? So
I think,
sorry.
No, go ahead, Giannis. I was going to make a comment, but go ahead.
I think that was Marine's point also in the thread. So that our code changes so fast that if you go 6 minor versions, 6 milestones, you cannot most probably backport. You have to rewrite the code, the patch. So he was worried that you have to have a team working on this feature twice. So in order to backport it, you have to rebuild it. So yeah.
So I don't quite understand the difference. Fabian, you mentioned maybe they should go with Omnibus. I'm not sure I understand the details there. But is there an option for them to just use a different provider? I know it's a simple question, but huge implication, right?
I think, I mean, probably, I don't know. Right. I think I don't know why they chose that specific setup, right? I think that was a professional services piece. I think what we would have to offer is some kind of migration path, right? And it would entail downtime. But it is also the case, like I think Catalin has highlighted, that specific customer, for example, relies on Postgres replication for their disaster recovery with Geo. And so the Azure is not going to offer that, for example, in the beginning. So like, even if they had Postgres like 12 available or 13, they wouldn't be able to use it, right? So I don't know. Like, I think it's also like, yeah, I'll follow up. I think there's more than one path forward, right? And maybe the decision will be, like delaying our Postgres stuff is it's just not the right business decision to make, right? At this moment in time. Yep. And it's also, I think this is maybe a retro piece for next time, right? When we consider our policies for, changing Postgres versions, I think we should have a pre-written statement the next time somebody, because it's always like that. Insert customer, two days before this happens, we'll say, can we please not do it, right? And then I think having a very clearly outlined sort of, this is why we are choosing to do this, right? And this is the alternative, right? I think will go a long way, because now we have to do it ad hoc. But that's for the future.
Cool. All right.
Thank you so much. Like I always find the discussions here very enlightening for me. So I really appreciate it.
Same. So you're going to follow up on the customer thread with the summary, Fabian?
I think I'll let Andreas do the summary. I'll chat with Josh to make sure that he's briefed, but I'll probably add my 2 cents as well.
Okay.
I'll run it by you first so you can see how good it is. Right.
Cool. All right. Next bullet point, y'all can read 14.0 release prep. I think they're going to try to tag the release today. It is the 15th. There's a lot of information there since it's a major change, lots of breaking changes. So read up, be prepared. On to number 4. So Postgres, post migrations are failing in staging. And the question I had was, did we have a miss by the migration testing framework? And Andreas answered yes and no. We didn't run the test prior to merging the MR.
Yeah, I think that's what we missed basically is looking at the results. We ran it after we merged, I think, just to see what would have come back, and we would have seen it. So basically what we're already working on is when you actually run it, right? We want to basically put a large exclamation mark on migration when it takes too long, or when it otherwise is not suitable to be merged. So that's one sort of visual that we will get to make that more apparent. And then running the testing framework is also something that we discussed. It is not being run automatically at the moment. Perhaps we should try what that means in terms of traffic. But we've also seen situations where it's just taking or basically overloading database lab because there is so many things going on. But perhaps that's the next step for us to try that and make that an automatic kind of thing.
Is it something that we can scale up, like do a percentage of MRs automatically and see where it breaks? So we're not going from 0 to 100% immediately. So maybe 25% of the MRs are tested, see how our server reacts and see where the breaking point is.
That's a good idea. Yeah, we can do some random numbers on the trigger, I guess.
Okay. I'm assuming we need issues for this to discuss how to do it the right way.
I think there already is an issue.
Right.
Okay.
Andreas filed an issue.
Let me find it.
Do we need to increase the number of runners too? Because I think we're limited to 2 runners or something right now for the migration job itself.
Yeah, that's kind of what we will have to see. I think it goes both for the runners and the database lab instance. I think that the database lab instance is probably more likely to be the bottleneck here because the migration runner, it's just a review process that runs a very expensive queries on the database. So I think it's more likely that we have to, or we're seeing problems with database lab, and then scaling that is also possible, like adding more database lab instances. But we would really benefit from, making that a standard setup so that we can bootstrap another instance easily. So that goes back to the provisioning discussion and automating that and hardening that and all that.
I think as an intermediate step, maybe we can improve the documentation around the database review process. I don't know if it's there already, but we should highly encourage database reviewers to run the testing job.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking we should add it. Maybe I wonder if it makes more sense to just add it as one of the review criteria and then educate people. In fact, we could even make it a preparation step. So instead of having reviewers do it, have authors be like, hey, when you're preparing for database review, make sure you go and run this job first.
That would be great. It's probably even not necessary that we run the database testing for each and every CI pipeline that we have, right? So keeping that manual and having people trigger it when they need it is actually better, I guess.
It's kind of something they already do. Like we ask authors to put the queries in the MR, and sometimes we ask them to go to Database Lab on Slack and put the results there. So it's kind of swapping that out for this new process in a sense.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Ollie, do you want to put that documentation together?
Sure, yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Next, so Kraz put together an update, finalize the new batch migrations. I don't know if anybody looked at this.
We merged the check basically so that we can reason about the state of the migrations.
Mhm.
And yeah, Krasimir also listed a couple of points that we still need to do.
I have a question. I'll share my screen so we can talk about this. So on the overall progress, release backfill. So we're still planning on doing column swap for all of these tables for 14.1. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Are we doing the geo table, doing the backfill soon, or is it already running? Let's see that the
I haven't
got
checked, but
merged.
I think that's probably done because that would be empty because we don't use geo, right? So not sure.
Have a geo. I don't think that even exists on .com. You could check. Oh,
This is a table
oh,
on
that's
the primer.
sorry.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm sorry. I got messed up. I thought we were talking about that other geo field.
Yeah.
Apologies. Yes, that will be empty on .com. You could check staging because we do have GeoNode and staging if you want to see how things went there.
Okay. So we're in good shape. All right. Thank you. Stop sharing for the moment. Heinrich, you have number 6.
Yeah, I saw the announcement on the sharding group. Like they decided on a path forward to move CI tables to a new database, if I'm correct. And so I thought maybe we could defer the renaming then because it would be similar thing, right? We would be backfilling on a separate database or something, or does that work? Or just so we could like give a final answer to verify and say, no, we're not doing the renaming during this primary key migration.
Yeah.
I think that the work by the starting group is vertical to any work on those tables, redesigning, partitioning, renaming, because I think that the starting group will just move the table to another site, to another database. And we cannot do anything at it while moving. So there is the process of moving and switching the application to the new shard, and there is anything else. So, and from my perspective, the database group is responsible for everything else. So including renaming. So we will have to address the renaming at some point. But I agree that maybe we should not do renaming now.
Has there been
And-
feedback from the Verify group on whether or not they want to help with that? I haven't checked the thread, but I think we were asking basically if they wanted to take that.
Yeah, there hasn't been like a definite answer there. Right? There's another question by Fabio posted, like, are we supposed to rename CI builds to CI jobs instead of CI jobs to builds, or like, things like that. So it's not really clear right now what we want to do, right? So
Just the fact that they keep asking questions about, well, if we're going to rename X, should we rename Y? They can do it later. Someone can do it later. Let's not complicate our migration and our primary key problem with renaming. And the last time I talked to Camille about this, he totally agreed. Like, this is entirely cosmetic, and if it needs to be deferred, let's defer it and not add some more problems to something we're trying to solve right now. So we're going to defer renaming. Let's just call it good.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Heinrich, what was the proposal that's been made for sharding or the CI tables that you mentioned?
Moving to a separate database, all the CI related tables. I think that's I'm not sure. I just read it somewhere, but
Yeah. So they're targeting the CI tables. They're shit, I forget the name of the one table. They're gonna start with one table that has no rows in it right now. So I think you've already seen that conversation, Andreas. I don't think there's anything new.
Okay.
Unless something happened overnight that I missed.
Okay.
Nope. All right. Andreas, you get the next one.
Speaking of the migrations, remember there was this one job that failed. We discussed about it last week already, and I've retried it with the same settings, and it once again failed. And then I even moved the subpage size to 100, so from 2,500, I think, to 100. It ran for like 50 minutes and then it failed. I haven't yet had time to look into it, but Heinrich was looking at it, pointing to the Redis interruptions. Is that something that you think is causing it?
Yeah, I think because just like the previous one, we're seeing this like no sentry error, no exception. So it's probably like a sig term or sig kill or something that stops it. And this one, we saw it ran for 46 minutes, right? Which is quite long. So it's very likely something stops it. And yeah, so it's a bit counterintuitive, but maybe increasing the sub-batch size would like make it finish faster. Still, the batch size is quite big, so we probably need to split it, maybe.
Is Heinrich breaking up for everyone else?
Yeah, but yeah, that's a valid idea. If we increase the sub-batch size, we make the job move faster if we don't break anything. So this is always a valid idea. I'm in favor to tell the same, we will get the same result if we could split the job in 10 jobs. So reducing the batch size. And that will be a more generic solution. So if we are really in a hurry to solve this, yes, we can increase the sub-batch size, and let's hope that it will work. But a more generic solution will be the ability to break the job again and again and again until we reach a point where it can run. I don't know, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, because I'm also like looking at this job to do the retry button on the admin panel, right? I'm looking for a what do you call this, more generic like fix to failed jobs, right? So I'm not sure if the retry button should, lower the sub batch size or split the job into multiple jobs or both, or what's interesting about this job is that we started with a batch size of I think 15,000, right, the default, and then because of the optimization it got to like 2 million rows in a batch, and it's close to our max actually. So something to consider is also to maybe should we lower the max of the optimizer or
But if we have a way to reduce them and split the job, we can recover from going too high, maybe.
Yeah, right.
So, and that job, if I recall correctly, it had a batch size of 1,400,000, and we had jobs with almost 2 million. So there were jobs that could make it with 2 million. So I'm still not sure why this keeps on failing. But yeah, this is the composite key.
Compound, so we don't really know how many rows.
Yeah. So this is a very, very, very special case. But if we solve it for this case, then we can solve. I think that we will feel safe that we can solve it for all problems. I don't know. I'm in favor of finding a way to split jobs. Just the simplest thing ever. When we retry, split it in two. And then if those two fail, split them in two again.
But if the failure is due to a statement timeout, then splitting the job won't help it, right? Because a smaller batch size, so
Yeah, so yeah, maybe we have to have a heuristic about the subdat size also.
So how does the retry work now with the admin panel? Does it just retry with the current settings?
it auto retries with 3 retries for
Hmm.
failed jobs after like a migration job. But we don't have the admin panel button yet. Yeah, so I'm looking for a way to add that. Find the best logic for retrying.
Gotcha. Wondering if there's just a manual intervention with allowing the user to configure it themselves, like give them the current settings and then ask them what they want for batch size and sub batch size.
Yeah, the thing is they won't know until they run it. Just like us, we don't know, and we rely on the optimization to tell us like how fast it goes. So yeah.
Yeah, less choice is better.
That's true.
And we have the option of going in the database and reducing the subdat size if this is really needed.
Yeah, tweaking the sub batch is kind of easier when you retry, like Andreas did, just changing it. But the batch size is trickier because you have to insert a new row, right, for the other job. So probably safer to have like a method here or something you could run on the console and the same thing that the retry button would call, rather than doing manual inserts or something. Yeah.
Okay, so what's the follow-up on this one then?
I'll create the backend code to split jobs so that we could, run it on the console or run it in the admin panel.
Okay.
So same logic would be used for both.
Should we also add cutting down the sub batch size in this case? So that we basically cut the batch size in two, and we also cut the jobs, and we also cut the sub batch size. Because for a customer, if they self-managed installation, if they run into a problem, then it might either be a statement timeout, so you want to cut the sub batch size, or the job gets killed because it ran too long, and you want to cut the batch size, and they have no way of recovering, I guess, nicely.
Yeah, the only problem there is like if you cut both, then you split it to 2, but maybe the split you did would also run longer, right? Because of the smaller sub batch size.
Right.
Do we optimize on the sub batch size? I forgot, but
We don't.
We don't.
No.
Right? Although we did see timeouts, right? And sentry, although the retries fixed them and all that, but we know that it could time out.
Yeah. I will be more careful taking the sub batch size down. So we could split the batch size in 2 and have a heuristic, a more linear heuristic for the sub batch size. And if this works, we can just keep on splitting. At some point, we will run batch size of 1 record. It will work.
Might take a while, but we'll get there, right? Okay, I'm gonna jump over to the triage board. We can get back to the build board if we need to. So Molly was on triage last week. I don't think anything exciting came up. Andreas, you're up next.
Sure.
And then I added a blurb about triaging Postgres checkup report. So if anybody has any feedback on that, I know Andreas, you put some feedback in there. I haven't read through it, to be honest with you. Trying to figure out a way. What's that?
Too much text, I guess. Sorry.
No, it's just, I actually ended up not working in the afternoon yesterday. I had a massive migraine. So I just haven't caught up yet. And there's an ongoing conversation about the database peak performance, which kind of ties into this. I'll link that issue here as well. So there's a lot of information that we get between the peak database peak performance and this one. There's a pretty good overlap between the top N queries. I think Postgres Checkup has top 15 and the peak performance has top 10. So top 10 by number of calls and top 10 by time taken. Both those reports include usually the same queries. So we're trying to find a way to streamline that process and make it more meaningful. There's some pretty strong opinions on both sides. So take a look at this MR and I will link the discussion about the database peak performance. Oh, you've all been copied on it, so you've all seen it. So if anybody has any feedback, welcome and appreciate it. We're trying to iterate on how to make those reports useful. All right, let's do the billboard real quick in the few minutes we have left. So closed. Ollie, you get the first one.
Yep, that's good.
All right. And then we already talked about dropping then on the tables for webhook logs. Awesome. Ollie, in review, sort and filter migrations.
Yeah, actually, there's one more MR for that. I guess it should technically be in dev. They're
No.
already filtered, like we've basically separated the .com migrations into a separate collapsible section. And now it's just about sorting the migrations in the order that they run.
That looks already great, collapsing the stuff. That's awesome.
It does.
We talked a bit about the select from PG type. Is there anything else left to be done on that, Heinrich?
Yeah, it's just I have the MR for review, the one for enabling it by default, and should be done.
Awesome. All right, and you have the add batched.
Yeah, that's the
migration
retry button we just talked about. So yeah.
Okay. Pat, any update on the monotonic IDs for pipelines?
Yeah, I should have the MR ready for review that removes the round trip. Otherwise, I wrote the summary in there last week and I created that new issue. So we'll see kind of we can get an answer on the gapless piece that we talked about.
Okay. Thank you. As we talked a bit about already, Alex.
Yeah, there's a merge request with the final parts of the changes in here. Simon helped a lot on a lot of the stuff, and we also took the opportunity to add RSpec testing and do some and I did some refactoring. So it kind of spiraled into several things.
Awesome. All right, Andreas.
I just rebased that one, and I was waiting for that automatic testing pipeline to come back. That's awesome. It just it works, and that's a great change for the testing pipeline. Being able to automatically run an example pipeline, seeing the feedback. That's awesome. So I sent that to review tomorrow, I guess.
Okay.
And the table ownership, it still sits there. I think it was pointed out that we might want to follow the way we associate controllers and other stuff with stage groups, and that's a great idea, I think. And I'll have to learn a bit more about that. And but basically, I think I would like to drive the YAML-based documentation forward, and then we can see where we add the ownership information. Maybe that's a separate one. Right now, this is a bit of a sketch only, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, it seems like it's generated a good amount of interest on that one. So I think there's a couple of people eager to see that get done. All right, that's it for the board and the agenda. Unless there's any other topics folks want to cover today. All right, silence is acceptance. Have a good Tuesday, everybody.
Cheers.